Good morning, friends. Welcome to this very unique Manthan morning. These are extremely challenging times for all of us, especially after what the world went through in the pandemic and even otherwise. We all often feel very depressed and see no hope or redemption. And then we see some extraordinary women and men and organizations who go out of their way to make a difference to our lives and our society. It is our great fortune that we have people and organizations who go beyond their normal calling and commit themselves and their lives to make a deep impact and to bring about big change. They make it worthwhile for us to live on this planet. At Manthan, we decided to showcase and celebrate individuals and organizations who have made a visible impact on society in their own ways. Today is the first of several conversations celebrating these achievers, and we are sure you will appreciate and enjoy all these conversations. Meera Shenoy is a dear friend, a long-term Manthanite, and a super achiever. Over the last several years, she has changed and impacted the lives of lakhs of people who the way they were living. Her story deserves to be told and shared and learned from. It is therefore with immense pleasure that we present to you Meera Shenoy. Meera is a system changer in the disability space. She is a pioneer in job-linked skilling of rural, tribal, and now youth with disabilities. She founded this fantastic organization called Youth4Jobs 9 years back, which has grown to be the largest organization in South Asia in the space of job-linked skilling of disabled. Y4J is a one-stop shop for over 600 companies and has won the highest national and international award like Asia winner for MIT prestigious Future of Work Award, Inclusion Innovation Challenge, and the Global Project Award for Innovations in IT and Employment. Her work was captured in a Harvard Business publication case study recently. She has written a book called Not Just Art and has also created a portal for art with disability. Her work is driven by passion and a belief in the potential of the disabled. She is a hero in every way and a person we all admire. We are so happy to have you with us, Meera. Welcome to Manthan and look forward to spending this time with you. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, Ajay. I think all of us know that there's a thriving world out there and there's a wilting world. It's just an accident of birth that all of us are born on this side. So 9 years back, when I was setting up Youth4Jobs, I actually reflected on how compassion and business can be combined to transform the lives of the underprivileged. When I looked at statistics, it just stunned me. The sheer scale of disability. 1 out of every 7 in the world are disabled, and the numbers are growing. Our census shows 21 million, but the World Bank and WHO reports show the number is actually 60 to 70 million. And 80% of them are in developing countries like India. Their education levels are low. Their employability, says the ILO, is just 30%. So obviously they are poor and a drain on the limited financial resources of families. Can I create a model for scale in this space for India and for the world? I reflected. So the vision for us was to take the disabled and the families from the virtual cycle of poverty to from the vicious cycle of poverty to the virtuous cycle of opportunity through something which I knew best, which I had done all my life. I had done this in the EGMM when I set up the first skilling mission of India, and that was for rural and tribal youth. And then I did it again in the poverty alleviation projects of the World Bank and the UNDP. So I thought maybe it's not so difficult. Maybe it's really easy. All I have to do is to put my learnings of disability on top of what I already knew. Little did I know what's in store for all of us. Disability is one word, but there are 21 disabilities which are recognized by the Act. I decided to start with youth with disabilities who are from rural areas with less education. After all, that's our Bharat. We had roadblocks at every step of the way, both the demand and the supply. When we went to the villages, we saw youth. But where were the youth with disabilities? And when we spoke to the parents shook their heads completely with disbelief. A job for this useless child? Not possible, they said. Then for our training centers, we needed special educators, and the best of them had all gone abroad. We needed sign language instructors. There were very few of them available. And the companies, yes, we knew companies because of our previous work. But when they came to the first training center which we set up, they asked us and saw the youth who looked completely different. They asked us questions like, are these youth healthy? Can they work? Is it expensive to hire them? What will happen to the other employees when they see these youth? It took us one whole year of struggle to put a template for scale. We were surrounded by cannots at every stage. So our work was to take each cannot and see how we can convert it to a can. For example, my corporate friends told me, Meera, don't attempt to scale across the country. You take the low-hanging, easier to work southern states because this is easier to do. After all, you're not a McDonald's who has a large budget and who can do a cookie cutter approach. But we thought if we've left our corporate jobs, surely we must do what India needs. So we went to the Bimaru states like Bihar, Odisha, Jharkhand, and now the enrollments are highest there. We also told, in the last 9 years, we told companies again and again, we gave them the message of don't hire from sympathy, but you should hire because it makes business sense. In 9 years, we set up 27 centers free of cost, residential, in 18 states of India to give them 21st century skills like digital literacy, life skills, soft skills. We gave them English in several ways, including inspirational songs. And we got companies to come to our training center to interact with these youth. Slide 1, please. Today, the work has evolved. We moved from being a skilling organization to a system changer. For example, in the villages, the community still think that disability is a curse. They hide their girls because they're worried a sibling will not get married. We run campaigns in local languages. We get our alumni who are in jobs to interact with them. To date, we have touched 7.2 million households with the message of ability in disability. We have trained about 27,600 youth with disabilities and given most of them jobs. That means almost 8 every single day. And what is the impact of a job? Let me just take the example of the most vulnerable, a young girl with disabilities. She carries with her 4 burdens. She's disabled, she's isolated, she's poor, she's jobless. Her parents are mostly marginal farmers or petty shopkeepers. Now, Ramya, who's speech and hearing impaired, sends home 10,000 every single month. This is not the erratic wages of her father. What this does is that her father is able to retire high-cost debt, better health and education for the siblings. For Ramya herself, she moves from being a liability to an asset, from being a cursed person every day to the darling of the family. And most importantly, she moves from being voiceless to having a new voice. And again, I hear these stories of these girls marrying better because of their new economic independence. I visited a TV channel and heard a voice. One of the alumni walked up to me and she said, "Madam, what you gave me was a husband and a kind of family I had never dreamt before." She was married to a bank clerk. And I know that if we do longitudinal studies, these alumni will ensure that their kids get educated, helping all of us to leave behind a better world and a better tomorrow.
You are muted, Vikram.
Amazing. I mean, the real one is, of course, the real scale what you have achieved in the last 10 years of your work. I don't know whether you really imagined that it will be so deep as it is now. The second thing is your courage. I must admire that you are now in, contrary to what people think, you bravely went to the Bimaru state. I think that that also needs a vision and a belief that you could make a change. But every day in the newspaper, we read that there are no jobs. So when you tell us the story of Ramya, obviously there's some training which you did, and what you tell us more about what you do to train and give this job to the vulnerable and the disabled. Can you just tell us that?
I think I'd like to tell you the COVID story because that's the kind of training which we do now, Vikram. The whole scenario, as you know, has completely changed. Okay. COVID happened and all our 27 residential training centers had to close down. But as the youth departed, they told us, in fact, they implored us not to stop these job-linked trainings because they knew that in these difficult times, their parents' wages will drop dramatically. It was a hunger issue for these vulnerable youth. So we decided to launch Youth4Jobs online. Now, you know, any digital interface for a grassroots audience means it has to overcome so many challenges, and you really need to be innovative. So what my team did was that before we launched it, they talked to all the stakeholders. They spent hours discussing with the youth about the comfort of learning, about accessibility, about attention span. This ensured that dropouts were minimum, which is generally the bane of most of the online programs. They spoke to companies, inviting them to give guest lectures. So this helped to bond the companies with the students, and they quickly posted their vacancies first to us. Now you asked about trainings. So we brainstormed on what should the design of the trainings be, and it has to be accessible. We knew connectivity would be a problem. So we created a library of content which the youth can dip into in case they miss the learnings. We had to create separate classes for the speech and hearing impaired. So our sign language instructors in-house, we worked a beautiful system where we created 102 videos of sign language content so that we could run these separate classes. And today, at least 40% of our youth are speech and hearing impaired. The duration of the training was fixed for 3 hours, and we had 2 batches, one in the morning, one in the evening. We used easy to use platforms like Zoom, Google Meet, WhatsApp. We had to constantly redesign our trainings. The curriculum was digital literacy, life skills, soft skills, giving them communication English, and towards the end where the jobs were industry specific learnings. But there was a challenger day and it was jugaad all the way because, it was not as if a central team could keep helping the local teams with the kind of problems which were arising. But what was tremendous was this became the first grassroots online training program for youth with disabilities from the rural areas. We had not anticipated the desire for these youth to be digitally savvy in times of isolation. Our phone lines were jammed with the students, with their parents, all wanting to enroll. It was really amazing for us on how do we handle all this, because we were really unprepared, I think, for this. By October, we found that there were youth with disabilities who had lost their jobs, who were retrenched. They started enrolling. They were frustrated because despite their work experience, they were not able to get new jobs. They didn't know where to find the jobs, essentially. So we created short-term trainings for them and put them into jobs. But the question you asked was right. Where were the jobs? Before, we used to put them into sectors, which was the service sector, actually, our largest employer, retail, hospitality, tourism. All of them had stopped hiring. We had to map new sectors like e-commerce, manufacturing, logistics, and figure them out. But it was not just this. Additionally, we had to figure out how do you get the youth to join the interview, because there were frequent lockdowns and the times of interviews had to be changed. The youth actually sat on trucks, changed 2-3 trucks to come in time for the interview. Then the companies asked us for help in putting the health protocols in place. We had to do, that meant designing posters and videos for the sign language, for the speech and hearing impaired. Then there was a major challenge which we still are grappling with. We haven't found a complete solution for that, which was as the youth enrolled from more and more remote areas, their levels were incredibly low. Whatever we do, we could not put them into organized sector jobs. This meant looking at the local MSMEs, local clusters, and seeing how we can find them those kind of jobs. We did several local campaigns with the message of each one, take one. But I don't think we've still figured out how to get that done at scale. So what were the outcomes? The result was when most organizations reduced or closed their skilling operations, we scaled up. Youth enrolled not just from 18 states, but pan-India, including Jammu, Kashmir, remote parts of Northeast. About 6,400 youth with disabilities we trained, and we gave many of them jobs. What I was really happy was when we looked at data, 23% of them were young girls with disabilities, including young widows. They quickly finished their work in the morning and they enrolled in our afternoon classes. Mothers, as always, once they knew what kind of work we were doing, they became actually our word of mouth ambassadors. Our corporate support, whether in monitoring, helping us to co-create curriculums, we had national and international volunteers. In fact, Google called us their first hero NGO. Next slide, please. So when we looked at comparative data of the last 2 years and the COVID year, clearly it showed us that we had converted an adversity to an opportunity. If you look at the number of training done, number of jobs we've given, the BPL youth, many of these youth were not just disabled, but also belonged to the scheduled caste. We looked at aspirational data, aspirational district data. The incomes of the youth had gone up, but that's because the e-commerce sector gives higher salaries than the retail sector. And most of our youth went to the e-commerce sector and the logistics sector. So this actually charged us to do better and better and keeps us going on this journey.
Ajay. You're muted, Ajay.
One sec. Am I? I wasn't.
We couldn't hear your question, Ajay.
Okay. Am I audible now?
Yeah.
Okay. So you have seen a dramatic movement away from the traditional opportunities that you found for the disabled after COVID started. Was COVID therefore a turning point in the way jobs grew?
Definitely, I think that COVID taught us two large lessons. One is that how to get scale using technology in a very difficult space. That's one. The second is that I think that there is no impossible in your dictionary, because every day was a challenge, and we had our funders wanting to sit in and listen to the classes which we were taking because this was something new which was happening. The flip side of it is, I think, the kind of support we got was overwhelming. For example, when funders slashed most of the funds of projects and people had to slash therefore salaries or retrench, we didn't have any of that issue. We in fact recruited during COVID times. So I think what it gave us is, it gave us courage that yes, there will be difficulties, but there's nothing impossible. And more importantly, the kind of stories which we get during COVID, the kind of impact. Recently, for example, I was in a training center because there was some video shooting happening there for an award. And there were these two girls beaming, twin sisters. And when they looked so happy, so I asked them, what's up? And they told me this story of how they were sitting in the house, unemployed all their lives. Parents used to say, you're a girl, you're disabled, you're useless, two of them sitting together. And now they came to our training center. Both of them have got jobs in Amazon. Both of them are sending 10,000 home. And they're saying now, they've really become heroes, not just in their family, but in a community when everyone has either lost their jobs or don't have jobs. Here are these youth who were lowest in the social hierarchy, now with confidence in their new economic independence. So I think the other important lesson for us is it's not just economic independence. What it is that it really creates a lot of social ripples.
It's very, very interesting, especially how you coped in COVID times. But you talked about Amazon, so I would like to know how do the Amazons of this world, not particularly Amazon, generally, how do the companies accept these youth in their workplaces? Does it need a counseling from you to them? Does it need a change of attitude? Because making them employable at the company seems to be crucial to the success of your vision. So if you can tell us how you are making this happen as far as the company is concerned.
That's true, Vikram. Companies have deep unconscious biases. It's almost like, people talk about gender bias, but here it's more because people don't see the disabled on the streets, since all the public roads are transport, nothing is accessible. So you only see beggars on the roads, and therefore their understanding of disability is very low. Let me tell you about 2 years when we had set up our organization. My team had gone on a spot check to see what was happening to somewhere where we had given 10 of our youth. And they saw all those 10 youth sitting outside. So when we asked the supervisor, he rudely said, I don't know how to work with them. We told him, your CEO wants these youth to be hired. Then he said, okay, let the CEO work with them. So we learned our lesson, let me tell you, the hard way. So what did we do? First, I set up a corporate connect team, which exclusively looks at these gaps which exist between the corporates and the hiring. And constantly, we put in a service for each gap, and these services are constantly increasing. We do industry-specific studies, and in these large sectors which can hire youth with disabilities, like, for example, inclusion in the banking and finance sector, inclusion in hospitality industry. And these give hard data which show you can. I think more importantly, it gets launched by a senior government officer and distributed to the industry. So companies say, hey, my colleague is hiring and it seems to help him. So maybe now I should also start. You know how in India, no? You need someone to be there before you. You don't want to take the risk of being the first one. And then immediately, others come on board. And that's how one thing we find leads to another. So we designed interactive sensitization workshops, and these are actually done at different level. For example, we did one you talked about Amazon, we did one at Amazon. Now we've done several there. We did sign language workshops. And today, after 2 years of working with them, I'm proud to say we are the knowledge partner, the only knowledge partner for Amazon in the country, and the sole vendor for hiring youth with disabilities in many of the miles. And let me tell you, making this decision is not easy. I told my team, in fact, do you want to do it? Because working with an Amazon is simply crazy. Let me tell you the kind of mind-boggling, and that's how I suppose they make their money, okay? They have contracts which are 10 days, 15 days. In Diwali and these times, the hiring is like suddenly 5,000 youth are needed. But all of them said, this is good for us. We don't mind working 24/7, but we will do this. So like that, we keep telling companies, don't hire because it's the right thing to do, but you hire because these youth are loyal and productive. And we have about 900 companies now working with us. 600 would be known names, whereas 300 would be smaller companies. Next slide, please. Let me give you the story of Foxconn, okay? Foxconn is a global leader in contract manufacturing of phones. Your iPhone, Nokia, all of them, they do it globally. So Josh Fogler, who's the CEO, he heard me in one of the conferences. So he told me, Meera, I just want you to go to my plants. There are two in the south. There's one in Sri City and one in Sri Perumbudur. His attrition then was a high 40%. So we worked with the engineering department and we saw that in the 64 steps, in 40 steps, the youth with disabilities could be integrated. We looked at agronomics, we put in place safety processes, like how do you evacuate in an emergency. We did sign language workshops. Foxconn found that in the beginning, and these were only girls with disabilities, our alumni did make mistakes, perhaps more than the others. But in 6 months' time, it was almost error-free work. Productivity increased by 50%, 50. Retention was a high 95%. So it was not surprising that when they began with a target of 2% of the workforce, they moved it to 5%, and today they're attempting a 10%. The other thing, of course, we want is we always want our youth to be in front-facing jobs. It's not always possible, but we feel if it's in a front-facing job, what happens is that everyone can be seamlessly sensitized. So we keep thinking, how do you do it? Now, retail is a large hirer. So we said, can the cashier job be done by a speech and hearing impaired youth? We went to several retailers, but they were not willing to risk it because it's a very critical job and their margins are very low. So they didn't want to take the risk. Finally, one agreed in Chennai, and we put a speech and hearing impaired cashier there. 3 months later, they ran a survey. 97% of the customers said they wanted, what do you think, a silent or a speaking cashier? 97% said they wanted a silent cashier because he doesn't talk, the work is quicker. And what did this was 50,000 new jobs which were not open before to the disabled. We got an opportunity to put. Today, you go to any mall, there's a strong chance that you'll find a youth with disability manning, especially the fast track counters. People may have forgotten who did the pilot, but a job has got mainstreamed for the youth with disabilities. With COVID, our corporate services went online. It was, again, not easy to do because you're doing interactive sensitization workshops. Now you have to do it online. So we worked very, very hard. I mean, I just say this with the slate of a statement, but let me tell you, there's a lot of hard work which goes on at the back. But what this helped us was that we could carry on our work of supporting companies even during COVID times. For example, we did the sensitization of one of the largest private sector banks board. And they were so happy with the 2.5-hour session of ours that he asked us next to sensitize all the senior leaders. And next we'll begin a hiring at the 2 and the 3 tier towns. Also, this gave a new opportunity which we had not thought about. What our multinational customers began telling us was saying, hey, now that you're online, you can give these services across the globe. India itself has so much to do. So should we go outside India? We asked ourselves this question. And then we said, why not? So, for example, for an MNC bank, we've done the services in Malaysia. And by the end of the year, I think we'll be in 3 new countries.
What a story that is. Absolutely fascinating. Tell me, why do you think these youth tend to perform better than the normal youth? Or do they, is there something that makes them work better?
I think one is definitely the need for a job, you know. Many of the companies, for example, tell us, and in many places, because our youth, for example, don't know good English, they work with us to lower the entry level, okay? Because they find that these youth catch up. The hunger for a job, the hunger to earn and better their quality of life, I think is something which our children and the others don't have. And I think that that is definitely one reason. Second is, I think in case of girls, it really gives them, opens up a new window from which, you know, they feel free like a bird. Again, I see them, you know, because if they were in the rural areas, they would have got married young if they had little disability, okay, or sat there doing nothing, cursed by others. Here you are, you're giving them this window of opportunity to suddenly start thinking, you know, they start saving, they put aside a little money for themselves also. Some of them even tell me that they're putting money for their wedding, you know, dresses. So I think it's letting them flower by looking at their abilities. This hunger which they have for a job manifests, I think, in better attrition, less attrition, and higher productivity. Again and again, we see it everywhere. More vulnerable you are, the better you work.
Wow. Wow.
That's an interesting perspective. Well, so can I say that there are some more lessons which you have learned from disabled, which you want to share with us?
Yeah, Vikram, I think, you know, if anyone asks me, not just me, but even my team, why are you in this journey? I think these youth inspire us every single day. They battle the hardships of stigma, of poverty and silence. Let me tell you this example of the boy whom I met recently. I'm just calling him Raju. He used to travel from Bidar to Hyderabad every day for a job. One day he got a train accident and he got up in this hospital with his right hand missing. Now, what does it mean? His job goes, he's unemployed from being employed, and he does not have a hand which all of us use so commonly. Someone told him about Youth4Jobs, so he came to our training center. Really, you know, talk of being driven, no? Determined boy to get a job again. So with his left hand, he learned computers, he could type as fast, he learned English. He didn't know Telugu, he was on the border state. He learned Telugu, and we put him in a job. His job was to look at the screen and you had to type. The HR was watching him. He was the first disabled hired by them. The HR was watching and they were simply amazed at what this boy was doing. So in 3 months, he managed to get the HR person to our training center to hire 100 more youth with disabilities. Okay. So that's one, you know, that's why they inspire us all the time. We didn't do it. He did it. I also find something, you know, fairly unusual. I've been talking to friends about it. I find the more vulnerable they are, the more generous they are. Let me tell you this. In COVID times, I found that 5 of our youth had pooled all their savings for a father's medical health bill, the hospital bill. I told them, what? All your savings are gone? And they told me, madam, we will work and save again. Will you or I ever do this? Empty our bank account? Somehow they seem to reach their level of abundance sooner than you and me. Slide, please. Then I find in our culture, I mean, these are all my reflections, that we tend to look at differences when we see people. We always say, no, fatter, thinner, fairer, brighter. Or if it's a child with disabilities in the rural areas, they don't call the child by the name. They say, Anda, Langda, okay? In the urban places, we say deaf and dumb. He's deaf, he's not dumb, okay? But those two go together, okay? On the other hand, just think about it. When you walk in your garden and you see the trees, see a bent tree, you see a tree with flowers, you see a tree with dried flowers, you see a tree with no flowers, okay? But what you do, you just allow it and say, so beautiful. You just appreciate it. But the minute we start thinking of persons, we highlight differences and we become judgmental. So when you look beyond externalities, when you stop being judgmental, that's when you are open to seeing beauty. We have a mentoring program, Vikram, with a multinational for our visually impaired in Delhi. It gets renewed every year. And the board, there's a board level commitment. And the board tells such beautiful stories of their employees getting inspired and learning from our youth as much as our youth, of course, learn from them. For them, it's tremendous confidence, but their employees learn as much. So I really think it's time we stopped just talking, and the time for action is now. We must ask these hard questions to a society which has created this tremendous problem of not accepting anyone just because he or she is different.
Yeah.
I was about to ask a question on similar lines, Meera. Most of the people we know have much less sensitivity than they should. How do you make that change? How do you sensitize people that everyone is equal regardless of any attribute that person has or doesn't have?
I don't think there's one answer to this, Ajay. I think you just have to keep trying in multiple ways. But now I do believe that what we need to do is we need to do solid work in schools, okay? Because those are the building blocks of change, and not enough work is done there. We find when we do our sensitization workshops at the school level, there's a lot of change. The principal calls me and says the teachers now understand better that the kids in inclusive schools, when the kids are there who are not disabled, who are disabled, they interact better. So school is important because I think society as a whole. I remember talking to this entrepreneur who I covered for my book, who had from a 1 crore loss-making company, he had taken it to a 300 crore company. And everywhere he's on a wheelchair, he can't stand. Everywhere where he went, if he went to the airport, the security guard will tell him, why don't you stand up to be frisked? Okay. And those who travel, when he came back, the club refused to renew his swimming membership. So he was saying, these people think as if disability is a disease. Actually, my backstroke is better than any of theirs. Okay. But he said, see, I don't feel low, Meera, because he said, it's the problem of ours. In schools, we don't teach these kids to be inclusive. So I think a lot of our attitudes Parents have to inculcate the spirit of inclusion. Schools have to inculcate it. And of course, we do it in multiple ways. But I do believe that young minds, if you shape them right, I think that you'll see a different kind of world which takes in different kinds of differences. I mean, not necessarily disability, but there are so many other differences which we are not tolerant of.
But Meera, you so rightly said that we should start early then. And do you think that what comes next is that you should work with children in schools with disability more, or it's a journey that you have to do both?
We do work in government schools. We have 2 government schools, and we've taken the 2 labor pools which affect employability the most. Somehow, I think, like other issues, Vikram, in India, there is so much to do. Whatever we do is like just one chota stone put into a pond, there's so much to do. So you have to, I think, make a little choices. So our school work, we haven't yet scaled up. However, many people ask us to do workshops in schools. And what we are doing is that we, in fact, sensitize them on different kinds of disabilities, even on the kind of disabilities which we don't necessarily work. Will we scale it up? I think I would like to look for a partnership to scale this rather than do it ourselves, because we are very clear on what in the next 3 years, we will do. We know very clearly that technologies are going to create extreme winners and extreme losers. Digital divide is a reality. And this too, we know that the invisible, like the disabled, will definitely lose out, and it will get worse and worse. So we've been doing a lot of thinking on how can this vulnerable section actually participate in the game-changing economy. So the 2 major things which we plan to do is, one is to give the disabled a voice. So the next phase of our work is to, and in fact, we've done a lot of the designing, is to design grassroots academy, which takes our work closer to the poor in rural areas with more of local employment opportunities. For this, we are recruiting a smart alumni who want to give back into Youth4Jobs and empowering them with leadership skills and smart tech. They will lead Youth4Jobs one day. That's our vision, and make us truly of the disabled by the disabled. Second, we plan to use technology as an instrument of change with partnerships. Mid-October, we will launch the first AI-triggered job portal, which is accessible for youth with disabilities. And we have a phenomenal partner who's so good at it, the IIT. Simultaneously, we are building the back end for data and analytics, which will strengthen the hands of economists and policymakers, because that's one big gap currently. Both this, I feel, will beyond any doubt create a sustained impact with this combination of, grassroots and policy. I constantly tell my team, we are so lucky that we do work which gives companies, youth, their parents, government, educators, and of course it makes us happy. As the Dalai Lama said it so beautifully, as human beings, we all want to be happy. So let me end by saying, let our alumni spread this happiness now with the Manthan family all across the globe. Video, please.
That was a wonderful video. I have one more question to ask you before we close, Meera. Through your entire talk, one thing came out is that you were thinking like an entrepreneur. You were thinking like an entrepreneur, like a professional manager, and the kind of initiatives and the kind of structure you have given to the organization reflects what the best businesses should actually be adopting. How did you manage to do that? This is phenomenal.
Oh, thanks for this. Actually, Ajay, let me answer this a little differently. Okay. I think the lessons are the same whether you're for a for-profit or a not-for-profit. Okay. The struggles which you have, for example, for getting angel funding, I also had that struggle. All of us are not rich. In the first year, for example, we didn't have our tax exemptions in place. So where do you raise money from? And we didn't want to take it from the government because we thought it'll be tight. We wanted to be free and come out with our own solution. And of course, solutions come. Okay, what that did was it took us to this amazing person who must speak sometime, Ramesh ji of Caring Friends, who gives when he finds a good cause without a 12A, without a ATG. He just invests in the person if he believes. So I think the struggles are the same. But when I speak at business schools, in fact, this question was asked to me at Stanford. They said, why do you want to do this work? Where is your business model? They asked me. Okay. So I nowadays say this very bluntly. Okay. If you keep looking at business models, most of the work in the vulnerable areas will not be done at all. Okay. I don't think that's a question we should ask. If there's an issue and you feel strongly about it, I think we need to act on that issue. If the business model evolves over the years, okay, so be it. It will happen. I mean, all of us understand the world of business well. We've all worked in corporates. We know how it's done. You moved by choice to a separate area. Though, of course, I think I've lost all my business skills. If you tell me to market any longer, I don't think I can. But you can hire people who are passionate and who do that to be with you. So I think the struggles are the same in both. And in a sense, you need to work in the same way. Use technology, be transparent, be passionate about your work, be a leader with a sense of purpose. All these are also there in the world of business, Ajay. And those, in fact, are the secret sauce which makes a business tick. So also in the not-for-profit world.
So I'll just add a corollary before Vikram asks the question. How do you build a culture like this in your entire team, and how do you hire people who are committed to your cause? They obviously don't join you to make a major career of their lives, and you are still able to build such a large team, such a talented team, such a committed team, and that's very admirable. So, what's your secret there?
I think that's one of the best things about Youth4Jobs, Ajay. And I touch wood every time, because what I am is I'm only the face of the organization. What goes behind is the amazing leaders I have and the amazing people who are there. They're people of different education levels. There are people now in our College Connect program. We have very educated people who speak Queen's English. In my WISE, which is a pan-India program, we have grassroots people, many of them who don't speak even good English, which is so-called important. But I think what we do is that everyone knows what are the values. I hardly address my team on targets or anything. I only tell them in every meeting, they must be bored. I tell them 3 things. One is transparency. I say, I don't care if you make mistakes, but you have to be transparent. And we as an organization are ruthless. You can make mistakes and expensive mistakes in your work, but if we find in money matters, you're not transparent, then we don't keep that person at all. And likewise in our relationships. And I think that helps, people know what you stand for, and therefore then those kind of people at least won't come to you for a partnership. It makes your world a little easy. The second is the potential, believe in the potential of the vulnerable, and that really was driven home to me. I think I also learned some of these lessons when I was embedded in the government. I had a wonderful government boss who would keep saying that, he would keep telling this, just because these youth are poor does not mean that we need to give them poor facilities. Okay. Likewise, for the disabled, just because they are disabled and different and poor does not mean we need to give them the best, which what you do for your own child. Okay. So we need to ask that, can you do the same thing, what you would do to your own child? To this young person who by some accident has been born somewhere else. On the third, which I tell all my team when we have training centers, to put it up in caps, is not a belief, but the surety that if you give a job to one disabled member of a family, it takes the entire family out of poverty in a very sustained manner. And that really triggers our work. I think drumming this again and again and again to my team, anyone you can ask, do they love their work? And you'll see when you interact with them, they may not be efficient, they may not be able to speak to you in the right way, but what they do have is a passion for this work. And if you don't have the passion for this work is not possible. I'm telling you, no one can do it if you don't love this work.
You're so right. I mean, so many of your NGOs who are led by leaders like you, I think the second rung have a shared passion, which is sort of unparalleled, and that is what keeps the organization going. I have a question from the audience, more targeted question. Are there particular disabilities suited to particular sectors? I mean, visually impaired or largely impaired in one kind of sector, hearing impaired are employed in other kind of sector? Can you just help us there?
There would be some sectors where, but let me give you a very simple example. For example, a speech and hearing impaired cannot get into any job, a telecalling job, okay? But what happens is generally, and my team is very good at it, is that job carving. So what you do is you look at the particular job and the kind of activities which are there. And then you cull out activities which a speech and hearing impaired can do. So the same job can get culled out for two different disabilities. Some activities could be done by a visual impaired, some can be done with a speech and hearing impaired. And when you do this, there are so many people in the BPO who tell me how successful, how well their work runs with this kind of job carving. Having said that, Vikram, what happens is that there's a reservation, as you know, in the government for youth with disabilities. So the visually impaired have a big aspiration for government jobs, okay? And they'll tell you why also. They'll say that in companies, you can get retrenched anytime. It's easier to work in a government job. But because those in the rural areas don't have technology, okay, you have to invest in this talking software called JAWS. It's only then they can work on computers. So therefore what happens is, and they don't have English, so therefore they don't pass, okay, the government exams. And on the other hand, the government posts are also not filled. So for the visually impaired now, we have got into government coaching. We want to build it into the best Agarwal, okay, kind of coaching, because these youth tell us such beautiful stories. They say, madam, we went to that coaching center and they charge 1 lakh, but none of the material is accessible. Okay, so what do we do? So because of their obsession with government jobs, they sit for years together. They'll keep on trying, keep on failing, So, so we hope that's another product of ours. The last is that, yes, if you have multiple disabilities, for example, the solutions are not easy. We have started working with them, and we need to work at least for over a year with a lot of a multi-pronged work using technology, using other things. But the good thing is now you're getting these work from home options. So we're able to, find those kind of working where he can work for 3-4 hours from his home. And otherwise they feel extremely frustrated sitting at home doing nothing.
Yes.
Amita Desai asking, how do you prepare the youth with confidence and work ethics?
Yeah, I think that's something we've really, mastered the act over the years, Amita, because youth come to our training centers with such low self-esteem, a completely lack of confidence, because in their homes, especially if you're a girl, this girl Kiran told me, every time I open my mouth, ma'am, my family told me to please shut up, because you're a girl and you're blind. What can you do in your life? Okay. And today you should see what she is, just like a little tigress, what we call her. Both work. The fact that her father was a mill worker in Bihar and thrown out of job. She was the only wage earner. So how do you do it? I think one is in the training class, we teach them, we remove the silence they have in their lives. We get them slowly to open up. That's why a lot of the work which we do is interactive. And therefore, I do believe that when COVID lifts, we'll go to a hybrid model. We won't do only the online. We will have to go to a hybrid model, because there's a lot more you can do when it's face to face and rather than just online. I think our struggle of taking them to the interview and empowering them to pass the test is all we have to do. Once they start earning, they forget their past. Many times we ask them, saying that, can you tell us what happened, your struggle before? They've completely forgotten it. They've become so empowered with their new economic independence. They don't want to think of the struggle of the past. So I keep telling my team, you must take 2 pictures. One when they came to our training center and one what they are, otherwise we won't be able to capture at all for us this story of change.
There's a question from the audience again. You have moved from journalism, I think largely business journalism, and you're now in this, he calls it the artist non-profit space for the disabled. What made that shift? That's question number one. And now that you have shifted, have you learned from the poor? And is it why you have pledged more than 50% of your wealth to philanthropy?
Yeah, okay. Let me take the first one. I think after business journalism, I moved on to television. I got myself a diploma in BBC, like many did at that point of time. And I used to, for 1 year, do this program called CNN itindia.com, which actually looked at innovations. And most of these innovations used to be in the rural areas. So as I captured this and I kept interacting with those people, somewhere I would get up every morning and say, this is not enough. I just must hands-on do this, work and work with these people. It's not enough to capture their stories on print, on television. And I think it's not just for me, but anyone who wants to do good, if you keep saying this again and again, this is what I want to do in life, somehow, the forces conspire to make it happen. And really the forces conspired to make it happen. I went for an interview. I went to be on the panel of interview for a communication job in one of the large poverty alleviation projects of the World Bank. No candidate turned up. So I think the officer in jest asked me, will you occupy that post? And I immediately saw it as an opportunity. And I said, yes. I didn't ask what the salary was. I asked nothing. I just said yes. Okay. And within 2 days, you know how it is, no? When they see competence, very soon I was made director of one more activity, which neither I knew nor they knew what to do, which was called Director Corporate Sector Partnerships with the Poor. But that gave me a super opportunity of understanding how can you make it win-win for a corporate to work with the poor. And it was pilots in that area where then the government said, why don't you actually set up a mission in the then United Andhra to train youth who are from the rural and tribal families to the needs of the market and put them into jobs. And again, there I said yes. I don't think, when I see something is what is fitting in my life journey, I take the risk of saying yes, saying, okay, solutions will come. And let me tell you, I make mistakes. The first academy I set up was called the Rural Retail Academy, which I set up in Warangal. Okay. Now, one huge company had told the government that they have a need of 50,000 youth. They had heard about this. It was brilliant work, etc. They came, they wrote in the visitors book, super work, brilliant work. No one came to hire. 1 week over, 2 weeks over. Okay. And my hair was turning gray because it's the government and the government is telling me, hey, money is getting spent. And it was my first pilot. You can imagine what it's like. Okay. So then I said, okay, one day enough is enough. I didn't know Kishore Biyani from Timbuktu, but I knew he was a maverick. So I found his email. I just wrote him. I said, Kishore ji, here's me. I'm a private sector person embedded in my government. This is the first pilot I'm doing. I believe this will be a change for rural youth. Can you please send your team? In 10 minutes, he had sent me his director HR. They came, they recruited the whole batch, and then there was no looking back. So I'm saying that when you want to do good, no, there are others who come on your path and help you to do good.
Amazing.
Yeah, the second question I must tell. It's really interesting. Venkat has started this organization called Living My Promise. What it does is it says that any of us can donate 50% of what we have at any point of time. If you want to do it now, in your will, to be here. So he asked me, will I be a signatory in Living My Promise? What have I been doing before that? Before that, my grandfather had told all of us, we must give 10% of whatever we earn, even if it's 10 rupees, 10% of 10 rupees, okay, to a cause, because that's the way he lived. So that's the way we used to try and do. But when Venkat asked this question, I didn't say yes immediately. I thought about it. And then I think if every one of us asks this question, you'll see that what's happening now around us, and it's not just me, but everyone else. The kids are telling us, we don't want your money, okay? We all have our own journey. And, you know, why should we only depend on Bill Gates, for God's sake, you know, to give away his money? I think every one of us can do something small, and these little ripples will actually create an ocean. So I reflected on it and I said yes. And I think it's been a wonderful journey. Living My Promise has opened me to ways. It's a beautiful group which is spreading, where people from big philanthropists to government people. I mean, you should see the kind of stories they tell you. Everyone driven by passion to give, you know. So it's not the amount you give, but again, there it's a sense of attitude and moving yourself from the space where I don't have enough to saying I have not just enough. I have whatever I have, it is abundant. You have to reach that level of saying I am abundant, and then you find that giving becomes really effortless.
Actually, I think that people who want to leave a lot of wealth for their children and grandchildren are insulting their children and grandchildren because they believe that they can't earn it. And we should give it to them.
Absolutely.
Usually, succeeding generations are smarter than us. They don't need your money.
Yeah,
that's true.
Meera, you have been an inspiration. This was an absolutely fascinating talk, fascinating conversation, and it brought out amazing aspects of your life, your thinking, your work, and the changes that you have brought about in society. Our compliments and gratitude to you for all that you have done, and really best wishes. I'm sure this talk will be heard by many people, will get inspired and join your journey that you have started. Thank you so very much for being with us.
Thank you, Meera. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ajay and Vikram, and everyone who's listened to me.
And thank you for being part of our own Manthan journey in the last 15 years.
Yeah.
Of course. Of course. I'm a big admirer. Y'all are amazing.
So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for spending this morning with us. I'm sure you have been inspired hugely by what Meera had to say. Next Sunday, we have a very interesting event, how information warfare shapes our world. Two amazing thinkers, Shivam Shankar Singh and Anand Venkat Narayanan, will come and spend the morning with us. And we have a set of a Pakistani musician coming, a music anthologist coming and talking to us on the 19th about recording Pakistani music history and researching on that. Followed by that, in the first week of October, we have a brilliant lineup of speakers for our annual Manthan Samvad event. So stay tuned, keep coming in, and be a part of the Manthan journey as well. Thank you very much. Meera, and thank you once again. So happy to have you here today.